We're listening to Wprk 91.5 FM. Wprk. I just said that 2 times in a row, didn't I know? But the funny thing is I have a friend in school, and he says, you know, Dimitri, regardless of all these things that you're saying, it's just opinion. And I'm like, well, I beg to differ, because if somebody was standing outside of your front door when you woke up in the morning and shot you, and you had a bullet hole in your chest, and you lay dying on the floor, and then you're dead. Your dead body and the bullet hole and the fact that he shot you is not an opinion, it's a fact.
Right, and I just got in an argument about that with somebody the other day. I said, like, that 60-day limit was up for Obama like a week and a half ago to get congressional approval for military action. That's, according to the war treaty, that is the time limit. You have 60 days. That expired about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago on Monday. Now, I said that to somebody, and they're like, well, that's just your opinion. I was like, it's not my opinion that it was unconstitutional.
You know, we hear that in the future we're going to have a better economy, and everybody hopes so, but it's hard to believe. It's hard for me to believe anyway, because I look back on our past 3 years, and what Congress has done and what the Fed has done, we've literally injected about $5.3 trillion, and I don't think we got very much for it. The national debt went up $5.1 trillion. Real GDP grew less than 1%. So I don't think we've gotten a whole lot. Unemployment really hasn't recovered. We still have 7 million people that have become unemployed. And one statistic that is very glaring, if you look at the chart, is how long people are unemployed. The average time used to be 17 weeks. Now it's nearly 40 weeks they stay unemployed. So I would say what we've been doing isn't very reassuring with all this money expenditure. But my question is related to the overall policy. If you took that $5.1 trillion and said that consumer spending is good, you could have given every single person in this country $17,000. Why is it the program of both the Congress and the Fed to direct the money to the people who have been making a lot of money, but what is the reason we direct it toward the banks and the big corporations, too big to fail, and we don't pay that much attention to the consumer? You say it's not spending money. Well, it's money out of thin air. You put it into the market and you hold assets, and the assets aren't, you know, they are diminishing in value when you buy up bad assets.
That right there immediately tells you that that's not part of the United States, and you know that already. Everybody knows that already. The Fed is offshore. It's a private institution.
The Federal Reserve was founded in 1913 and signed for by President Woodrow Wilson, who was backed by these banking institutions. Now the problem is that this was never the intent of the founding fathers, and things like income tax is actually illegal. When you sign a W-2, you're actually signing your freedom away. You're signing your rights and all of your what we were founded on away. There's a citizen of the United States of America, and then there's an American citizen. American citizens do not have to pay taxes. If you actually stopped paying taxes and you're taken to the Supreme Court, you would actually win, because it is against your constitutional rights to have to pay taxes. The global elite control both sides because they control the money, and they also control the information influx to our system. So who controls the past is controlling the president or president, all of the above. So basically, by them controlling both sides, they have the money to fund both sides of every single war. They have the information to control both sides of every single war. They're controlling the media that's giving the people on both sides of every single war a different version of the story to keep you confused, to keep you constantly questioning what's going on. I don't really know what's going on in the war in Afghanistan. I'm only being told what's going on in the war in Afghanistan by the media or in movies that I'm seeing in Hollywood. But that's not actually the reality of the situation. So not only are they controlling the money system, the system of religion, the system of the media, they're controlling every single aspect because they are funding those things and they have purchased everything up. Well, the reason why the Federal Reserve can control the debt is because for every dollar that they spend, they're borrowing 50% of that from other countries like China. So what is the collateral? You always have to have collateral when you're borrowing money. A loan has to have collateral. We, the civilians, the citizens of this country, are the collateral for these loans that our government is making. The Federal Reserve is making loans but they're not using anything as collateral but human lives, us. When the system falls apart and there's no need for us anymore, they're going to systematically eradicate us and use the federal system to put RFID microchips inside of our bodies, and that will be our currency. So the Federal Reserve is just smoke and mirrors for the next phase of implementation, which means the paper goes away. That, okay, let's say all the citizens came up and said, down with the Federal Reserve all at the same time, and they go, okay, we have been stealing from you. They've been doing it for so long, and the plan has been in place for so long, that we're past the point of no return. There's no way to right the wrong that they've done already. The next step is, all right, well, now that you know, here's the microchip. You either take it or you die. Or you don't get fed. You don't have gasoline for your vehicle.
You know, the price of gold today is $1,580. The dollar during these last 3 years was devalued almost 50%. Do you think gold is money?
No.
It's not money. Even if it had been money for 6,000 years, somebody reversed that and eliminated that economic law.
Well, it's an asset.
The paper that it's being printed on is not worth anything at all. It's just paper. The fact of the matter is, it was supposed to be every single note that you had was worth silver or gold somewhere in the federal government system. But now, because of inflation, it's not. So what really is going to make people upset the most is when you have a paycheck that you just worked all week for that's $700. Well, when that paycheck is worth 75% less than what it was originally worth 10 years ago, and you have to have a big, huge wheelbarrow full of money to purchase a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk, then you're going to start getting upset. It is a privately run institution, and that people are making money off of our turmoil, and we're pretty much being slaves to them. Money that we make is not worth anything. They're controlling it. They're just calling it something different. In Europe, they're calling it the euro. In America, they're calling it the dollar. It is not worth anything. You would be able to take a dollar bill into a bank and get the amount of silver that it was worth, an actual precious mineral that this was worth, the tangible element that this piece of paper was worth. And there was a gold standard as well for the amount of money the paper was being printed was the amount of gold that we had. Their temporary solutions throughout this century have been, well, let's just print more money, let's just print more money, let's just print more money. We haven't felt the ramifications of that yet, because there's always these little boosts in the economy which have to do with war. War boosts the economy.
It does, but at the same time it tears the economy apart. It boosts the economy in the sense that...
For the elite.
At that time, it boosts the military-industrial complex. It boosts companies like the Carlyle Group, which is owned by Bush and
United
Laden's
Arms
at the same time.
United Arms.
How nobody gets that, and that's basically public knowledge. It does boost that, you're right, but at the same time, it does rip the economy apart.
The terminologies that people use, especially in places of power, like Patriot Act, we automatically think that because this act has the word patriot assigned to it, that it's something that's going to be good for me, that it's something that's here to protect me and make me feel safe and sound. When we hear terms like the Federal Reserve, we see that the word federal is attached to it, so we automatically think that it's something that the government's doing to help me.
In order for the government to carry out necessary procedures against terrorism, Reichstag must support an enabling act. This act is your opportunity to hand power over those that can wield it most effectively. From now on, all legislation will be handled by the administration, which will have sole right to make constitutional changes. Freedoms of speech, association, and the press are temporarily suspended. Privacy rights in relation to telephone and postal communication are revoked.
It's no longer a theory that the government had involvement in events like 9/11, Oklahoma City bombings, and Pearl Harbor, because we actually have factual evidence that they tried to do it before. Herbert Walker Bush, during his administration in 1993, the FBI was actually caught on tape offering an Egyptian terrorist money, it was $1 million, to put a truck full of explosives near one of the support columns of one of the buildings, but it did not bring the building down. It did not have the death toll that they wanted, and they didn't have enough of a visual image on TV and television to push us into war. There was an offshoot called Operation Desert Storm that happened because of that, but there is actual factual evidence that the FBI was directly involved in a first attempt on the World Trade Center. So you have to take that knowledge that history does repeat itself, and that they already tried once. What's going to stop them from trying again? This is a smoking gun. George W. Bush just finished the work of his father. He just picked up right where his father left off and completed the assignment at hand. There's also information that there was calls that were made to people in political power not to go to the World Trade Centers on that particular day, that were warned something is going to happen. There was also other information about the security of the building. For the 2 weeks beforehand, bomb-sniffing dogs and the security was lacking because they told them that there was going to be drills and operations conducted by the military during that particular day that was just going to be an exercise or a demonstration or a test. So there's all these factual things that actually did happen that when you start connecting the pieces and connecting the dots, it leads you to an educated understanding that this is no longer a theory, that you have factual evidence to support the fact that you know that the government was involved in bringing the towers down.
We're going to take a closer look tonight at another example of where, despite the conventional wisdom, there were people in the United States who actually were preparing to defend against the kind of attacks which occurred here on 9/11. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD for short, has been defending the skies over the U.S. and Canada for almost 50 years, 46 to be precise. USA Today reports that in the 2 years before the attacks on September the 11th, NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons. And one target was the World Trade Center.
We knew he hated us. But there was nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government, that could envision flying airplanes into buildings on such a massive scale.
I don't think anybody could have predicted that these people would take an airplane and slam it into the World Trade Center, take another one and slam it into the Pentagon. Well,
in regards to the government's involvement in 9/11, most of the politicians came forward and said that they didn't have any clue that this was going to happen. And in actuality, they did. There was plenty of warning. There was actually a gentleman named William Cooper who predicted that the events of 9/11 in June of that year and said, we know for a fact that Osama bin Laden has been coached and operated and given money and information by the CIA on how to pull this off with military excellence. False flag operation to the elite is, if there isn't an enemy to fight, you have to create one. So during the time of JFK's administration, Cuba was going to be considered the enemy. Castro, this little island that was right near America that potentially could be a threat to all American citizens.
Soviets.
Yes. Well, the Soviets were going to, quote-unquote, put bases on Cuba, aim weapons that could destroy America from Cuba, missiles that were going to come here and destroy us. Now, this general, L.L. Lemonster was his name. He was a 4-star general and the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What he did is he came up with this document called the Northwoods document that was going to implement all of that, kind of like the first 9/11 attempt. But there's been other attempts before, but this is the first one that us as truth seekers actually have factual documentation that we can use as a smoking gun and say, this isn't something that we made up. This is not a theory. This is some hard factual information that these people have tried to do this before, and what's going to stop them from trying to do it again. It was going to be us doing it, our own military doing it, and we were going to blame it on Cuba. If you look at it, I mean, he actually had it written every single step that we were going to do along the line. Create terror campaigns, incite false rioting, blow up boats, fly airplanes into...
Fake hijacked planes into buildings.
Right.
I'm very keen on.
So this gentleman wrote all of this information down, and it got passed through every single person all the way up to the President of the United States of America, who at that time was John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy said, no, we cannot do this. This is not right. I say no, and we all know what happened to him.